black community, there are disproportionate levels of crime and disorder. This is by no means new news, but considering ethnic minorities in general represent less than 10% of the population, this topic still causes great concern. In this programme, we will look at the issues surrounding crime and disorder within the black community in an attempt to shed light on the institutional changes that need to take place. Marvin Hinds is a qualified youth worker and is currently training to be a mentor. During his own school days, however, exclusion was imposed upon him more than once.
I've been excluded from school twice, from secondary school twice. Once was smoking weed on a residential trip, and the second time was it was behavioural. I was on referral and the behaviour didn't improve over a certain period of time, so again I was suspended for that. I feel in the later years of school I began to be labelled, I think, not so much for the behaviour that I had done in the past, although some of it was to do with that. I think it was for the others in my school, because I have to explain my school was predominantly white, in a white area of the city. And what I found was that when we were in trouble, the ones from the area that we were from, there was 5 or 6 of us all in all to begin with. It seemed that the trouble, the rest of us, it would span to. Teachers would want to speak to the rest of us about an incident that might not have had anything to do with us. And I think by the end of the school, it began to get labelled, and I think that was clearly underlined when my youngest brother was refused entrance into that school. So, and I think our catchment area was ruled out altogether. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know why more action seemed to have been taken than in other cases, because I had a lot of white friends obviously as well in school, and the trouble that they may have got into might have been of a similar nature. Referrals, I think it may have gone as far as a detention in most cases. It was very rare that I seen somebody put on referral over a period of time, or put on a contract with a certain agreement. It was only 5 friends that I knew, including myself, that course of action was taken against throughout the entire school. I didn't hear any other incidents of that happening. So I was aware that it was my friends and myself that the referrals were given out to, and not any other peoples that I knew of in the school. When I spoke to my mother about this, she made me aware that it may be the school weren't taking into consideration where we were from or what have, or they were taking into consideration where we were from in what, like, whether a negative or positive way. I spoke to my friends about it, they'd said that their parents had mentioned that before as well, but nothing, like I said, had been done about it. No parent I know of had went into the school and spoke to anybody.
Lloyd Blake is a typical example of someone who has managed to turn his life around after being involved in crime. After going through a number of changes, he realised enough was enough and decided to get back into education and find his vocation in life. Now he's doing a degree and studying to be a draftsman. Is it easy for our black youngsters to get involved in crime?
In some cases it can be. If you're in a deprived area and you don't see no hope or no way out, and what you see in front of you is, quick money or people that appear to be making quick money, then that life would seem like the right way to go, and can be as easy as being offered a case full of jumpers to sell and receive a small profit, and that in itself would be the beginning of what would be a criminal activity or a life of crime if you choose to stay there.
Does it accelerate quite quickly once you've made that choice?
In some cases it can be quite profitable insofar as the aims you start off with, the things you want, the furniture, whether it's just a settee, a table, a knife and fork, those things, you can get those things, but then suddenly the goalposts may change, and what started off to be innocent and I just need to get by and survive can turn into, well, you know, I can help my sister, I can help my brother, I can help my mother, my friend, and it pretty much goes on from there. I think the criminal justice system, the police department, the probation services, I think they all have a role to play, and insofar as the community, we need the youngsters, we need those bodies to be going into schools, to be given career days, to be given opportunities to tell the youngsters that these services are the backbone of our society, and these are what we need. This is where we need you. We don't need you in Tesco's at the cashier point. We need you in as a judge, a magistrate, as an inspector, as a sergeant. We need you in the army. We need you as a doctor, as a lawyer. We need those people so that when more of our own go into these situations, whether it be a miscarriage of justice or it wasn't an intentional act, we have people on the other side of the fence that do, I'm not saying that they're going to give them leniency, but do understand to a degree where they're coming from, and that any such sentence will be reflected upon the person's being, and not for the simple reason that they're coming from a particular postcode and look a particular colour or have a particular hairstyle or just a particular way.
Roy Ledgister is one of the youngest black lawyers in the country to own a law firm. He decided to leave the bright lights of London to set up another legal firm here in Manchester, dedicated to making a positive difference within the community.
I think the institutions have a responsibility when processing offenders, be they black, white or otherwise. They have a responsibility to try and make sure that the person that enters the system is different to the person that comes out the system. But what the institutions do is they're constrained by budgets, and money is far more important than, you know, irrespective of what rhetoric governments speak, money is far more important than results. And institutions haven't got time to sit down with a child and find out what's the problem. You know, why are you committing crime? The courts haven't got time to find out why you're committing crime, but they try. You know, the best they've got is a probation service. What if the probation officer hasn't got time? What if the child doesn't turn up? They've got to. There must be a degree of slack. The system, the institutions have got to realise where these people are coming from, where these children are coming from, and they owe a responsibility to the young child who can't make his appointments. There's no point saying, well, you failed to turn up twice, I'm breaching you. You know, you go into prison. How's that going to help him? And how can you say to this child, when you come out, you know, you're going to be a reformed character? He's going to hate the system. He's hating the system immediately, and he will refuse to work with it. He must rebel against that system. And unless you've got people within institutions who are prepared to take time out and genuinely care for a lot of the young people, and things can't change. There are many people out there who do care, but they don't have the time, they don't have the resources to be able to nurture and make sure that the final product, the end result, is you end up with a person that's different to the person that entered the system originally. Time and money are constraints which are often conflicting with each other. Absolutely, I think there are definitely elements of bias within the judicial system, and I think it's starting to change simply because we are getting members of the judiciary from different walks of life. If you went back 30, 40, 50 years, you'd struggle to find a black judge, if there was any. Nowadays there are black judges coming through, there are judges from working class backgrounds coming through, and you need those types of people to sit on the judiciary. How can you have members of the judiciary who've never been into an inner city, who've never been into a black area, don't understand the perils of growing up in the inner cities? How can they then try and pass judgment or even understand where the youth is coming from when he goes out and, I don't know, he's subject to a certain peer pressure? The judge cannot, with the best will in the world, cannot understand where that child's coming from. It's like me trying to understand, the problems of a Martian. I could never understand it because I've never been there. A lot of the judges, I feel, do pay lip service to probation reports, because so many times, you have a probation report and the judiciary just aren't interested. They plainly are not interested in what's being said. it may be because a lot of people are relying on the same excuses. So, heard it all before, that's what the judge thinks to himself. Process the client, give him a sentence without listening, without really trying to get to the root of it, trying to get to the cause of the problem, and without addressing the cause of the problems. I think the judiciary, not all, but some, are certainly giving young black people an unfair trial.
Mrs. Da-Ccocdia is a long-serving activist within the African Caribbean community. She sits on a number of boards, spreading her influence and experience on matters like health, housing, women and business enterprise.
Social changes occur due to people, what they see on television, what they want. They see that other groups have got and they haven't. And I think they're aspiring to certain things, to attain things that sometimes are out of their reach. But they feel that by any means possible, they're going to attain them. And I think it is unfortunate that the pattern we see from America, from the big bods in the music world and so on, are influencing them to a point where they're losing the perspective of parents and family and the community to which they belong. It is recorded in the criminal justice system that we as a people are more likely to experience crime to ourselves. Our young people are more likely to be arrested. They are more likely to be less likely to be cautioned, are more likely to receive longer custodial sentences if they come up against the law. We don't want to live in a lawless society, but we have problems, and they're not the only ones that are creating problems, but of course it's heightened because we are in the minority. I think the family itself have to begin to help the young people to change their attitude towards any elements that they find racist elements or other. Schools, we've got to start there by enabling the young people to understand that they must seek to develop themselves so that they can have a role to play in changing attitudes as well, and also the community beginning to say, we have to sit down and look at the economic situation that our young people are in. How are we going to help them to become entrepreneurs, to have some of the sweetness that a lot of other people have, that they don't see themselves having it, but they've got to develop that. And we as a people have to look at developing enterprises.
Fredia Anderson is the Chief Executive of a regional charity called Partners of Prisoners and Family Support Group. She also sits on the board of the National Probation Service.
Going back to 1988, I had a personal experience of having somebody who was caught up in the criminal justice system and ended up in the prison system. And I felt at that time there was no access of support or services for me as an individual. And what I did was place an advert in a paper and suddenly realised there was hundreds, thousands of other people like me. And we formed together as a group and mobilised ourselves and became a charity, and then started to secure funding to be able to start to give services to prisoners' families. We initially started our awareness raising and building links and entering into dialogue with the prison service. And an example of that is when I used to visit back in the 80s, families queued up outside prison establishments because what they didn't have was anywhere for us to wait. Things have moved on, I'm pleased to say, with the campaigning services like ours have done and others. We now have visiting centres so that families have somewhere where they can be treated with dignity and respect prior to going into an establishment. So they're the sorts of changes that we have begun to lobby and then been able to see the results from. I think if you want to divert young black men from crime, giving them choices is fundamentally the key. encouraging rights and responsibilities, ensuring that families can model equally the good behaviour that's needed so that they are conscious and clear of what the difference is between right and wrong. The other thing we have to acknowledge is public services have to be more joined up at what they do, and we need to start with them younger rather than just wait until they reach that volatile age of becoming 13, 14 and 15 and suddenly thinking, oh, these young men, from what was the young kid that was bright and had got everything going for it, is now criminalised and stereotyped. So I think there needs to be a lot of work done. And more importantly, the only way to do it is to empower, actually, those young black men who've been criminalised to become involved. It can't always be done by people like myself or the so-called professionals. We're not going to do it on our own. They have to have the power to do it for themselves.
Patsy McKie lost her son 3.5 years ago during a gang shooting. Since then, she has worked tirelessly on every level, locally and internationally, committed to reversing the trend towards gang culture.
I believe it's for support. It gave me support anyway, going there. Even though I was the only mother at the time who had lost someone, I think there was lots of other mothers who actually knew someone, or a friend or a relative, who had actually lost someone or had been shot or maybe even had been beaten. So I suppose they felt there was a need for a black group because you have got victim support. And I presume they felt that their needs weren't met by victim support, so they should start Mothers Against Violence. Well, I know there is victim support, and when I lost my son, when my son was killed, victim support came to me, and I really found them very helpful. The reason was that did I know they exist? I didn't think about them, didn't know they existed. But they actually said things to me that I don't think I would have known. I wouldn't know that I could actually fill in a form and claim a couple of £1,000 because my son was killed. I wouldn't have known that. And they were willing to give me support, you know, whatever support I needed, they were willing to give it to me. And I thought that was good. Well, I've listened to quite a number of mothers who've had problems with either the children or the police, and they have actually had bad experience with the police in one way or the other. One woman said she had to wait, I think it was 22 hours before she could see her child's body. Now, that wasn't the same with me. I saw it straight away and, you know, did what I had to do. And I know other women have complained about, you know, different way, unfair, they felt it was unfair, and that they were treated in different types of ways, you know what I mean? They weren't treated as a mother who's just lost someone. Sometimes they felt like they were the criminals, or, you know, that kind of thing. So I think for the most of the people who have spoken to me, the answer is no.
All the agencies such as the police, the education, criminal justice, I think that if the people who worked in those organisations were they were aware of the stereotypes that are there, but didn't make assumptions in their work, and used good non-judgmental practice in dealing with the cases that they deal with, I feel there'd be less inequalities dealt when dealing with young people who get involved in crime. I think that if a police officer comes with an open mind to a young person and treats everyone as an individual, those type of things will happen a lot less.
I think that in all the services provided, whether it be police, social services, probation, civil servants, politicians, you know, we need counsellors, we need to get the youngsters involved into these areas of life so that when they become adults and productive in society, they too can incorporate themselves into these bodies, and thus we'll get a fairer balance of justice as we see it in society today.
We need key people at the top who are creating policy and directing policy, who understand what the problems are in the community, so we can actually concentrate on the causes of crime and stop being so tough on it. Without concentrating on the causes of it, there's going to be far more crime. And if we concentrate simply on the causes, there's not going to be a need for being too tough on crime. There really isn't a need for it.
They need to begin to develop services that they have actually taken away from the community in the form of youth groups, leadership groups, and so on, that will help the young people to think first before they go into violence.
I think the Race Equality Scheme and the Racial Relations Act is saying we can do better. And I think they need to recognise, to do better, they have to work with others. They're not going to be able to do it by themselves.
The police and the law system need to look at the community and listen to the community a bit more, and look at how flexibility can come into the law, and bring in changes in working with the community to to bring change in our community. And I believe it's the duty of the community to do that too, because I really believe the police still is a community. They're human beings like anybody else, and I'm sure they get their children murdered and things like that as well.
It is abundantly clear that there needs to be a change of ethos within the criminal justice system concerning ethnic minorities. In addition, black people need to be better represented within our national institutions holding key positions of power and influence. Only then can we provide a better cultural understanding, as well as be an active part of the decision-making process. Our youngsters need to be convinced that there is a genuine alternative to crime and disorder.
I think it is significant that we are here today to mark this very triumphant occasion in terms of Manchester Carnival. For years now, Manchester Carnival have been going, but it has reached a new height, a new level, a new truth start to come through, in which the carnival itself is beginning not just about dance and celebration and people enjoying themselves, but to put a historical, right, and a political connection to carnival, because that is what carnival really was about. It was about celebrating the struggles of African people. And in order to follow through with that, I will say just a few things like what Edward Blyden has said once. He said, each race has a soul that finds expression through its institutions. When we destroy these institutions, we destroy the very soul of the people. Hence the reason why we must continue to celebrate Carnival and to continue to build institutions.